Hello, and thank you for joining us for the second episode of Fiction Fans, a podcast where we read books and other words too. I'm joined by my cousin Sarah. Hello, Sarah.
Hi, Lily.
So, what are you drinking on this fine Wednesday evening?
I am drinking a cider from a local cidery that is really they're so lovely. They're this small local company and called Blindwood. They do deliver nationwide if you're interested, but in the Bay Area they hand deliver, and they're very sweet and I love them very much. And their cider is really good. So that's what I'm drinking. What are you drinking tonight?
Oh, well, nothing quite that adorable. Also local cider, but I'm just drinking all the way hand delivered from my local Safeway. Semi-sweet from Seattle Cider Company. It's a cider night, apparently.
It is a cider night.
It's been snowing up here, so I'm all about seasonal beverages right now.
I'm very jealous. So, Lily, anything good happened to you this week?
Well, one of my cats threw up a hairball, which I know doesn't sound like a good thing, but our other cat has asthma, and so whenever I hear those sort of hacking noises, it's frankly terrifying. But it was a hairball instead of an asthma attack. That's great news.
Yay! It's not often one gets to yay a hairball.
Right? Also, if it was just regular throw up, I would be worried that something was wrong. A hairball is just a hairball. I don't have to worry
Yeah.
about that. It's best case scenario when you hear that noise. How about you? Anything good happen?
If you had asked me this question at like 3 o'clock, I was going to say I finally solved this knotty problem that I was trying to fix at work. And then at like 3:15, I discovered that my solution works for the problem that I was trying to fix, but it brings something else up. So now I'm sort of back to the drawing board, which
Oh
is less
no.
good. Less good. But other than that, I mean, life has been fine, but there's been no standout excellent events. The pugs are in good health, continued good health.
A week where nothing happens to the pugs is good news, isn't it?
That's true. It is good news. I have never known a pug to have as many problems as Mr. Squeak does. My problem child.
Well, a cheers to Mr. Squeak's continued good health.
And to your pugs, and to your cat's hairballs and no asthma attacks.
Yes. So, have you read any good books lately?
Well, besides the books that we are talking about in this podcast,
I think it's assumed that we're not going to include those in the opening. Like, they'll hear about it. It's fine.
yeah, I know, but I have read them lately.
It's true, and they are good.
And they are good. So, yes, besides those, I have restarted up Wheel of Time. I'm on book 10, which is Crossroads of Twilight. I am almost 200 pages in, so I still have quite a ways to go. And I am enjoying it thus far. I still don't think that it deserves to be part of the slog. Although it's maybe a little slower than book 9 was. But have you read any good books lately?
I have. I just finished A Song of Blood and Stone by El Penelope, which I talked about last time, so I won't go too into it. But fantastic.
You enjoyed it?
Oh, it was very good. I think I might go a little bit more in depth in a later episode, so I don't want to half-ass it. That book deserves even, I know you want to read it, so it would probably just be an entirely spoiler-free conversation, but it deserves some time to be praised more than just,
Yeah.
I liked it. I did like it. That's a true statement, but
Yes, we will dedicate some time to it in a later episode for sure.
So remind me, how many books total are in Wheel of Time?
So the main series comprises of 14 novels, and then there is the prequel novel. So 15 like books in total.
And what is the slog, quote unquote, supposed to be?
I think that, and I could be wrong about this, but I think that the slog is supposed to be books 8 through 11, I want to say. And I thought that 8 was a little slow. I think I said this in our last episode, possibly, so I might be repeating myself here.
I was mostly wondering about the ratio of, slog to total series. And it's like, that's like half of it. That's not
Oh,
half of it. It's a quarter of it.
it's not half. Yeah.
That's still
But
quite a bit.
also again, I highly disagree. I thought book 9 was great. Like I flew through that book. I had no troubles with it. And book 10 is a little slower maybe, but also not anything near what I would call a slog. Like I don't have to bribe myself to drink it with wine. So it doesn't count as a slog for me. But books 1 and 2 and a little bit of book 8, I said, well, if I read tonight, I can drink wine. And I got through the books that way.
That's how I do dishes.
Fair.
To avoid spoilers, for books 9 and 10 in the Wheel of Time series, go to timestamp 11:15.
So Sarah, you are on this journey to read all of Wheel of Time, and I know that's a dramatic way of saying it, but I feel like it fits.
I mean, kind of accurate.
You had mentioned having a strong reaction to, I think it was the end of book 9.
Well, no. So there are spoilers, but they're not really spoilers for the main bits of the plot, I don't think.
We already tagged this whole thing. It's go wild.
We did, but I'm just saying, like, they're not. I'm not spoiling like big plot things, just sort of minor character relationship things. So in book 10, where I am in book 10, Matt, who is one of the main characters, gets the news that Tylan has died. And I have really complicated, and he's sad about that, but and thus so am I, but I have complicated feelings about it because so Tylan is the ruler of the city, Abu Dar, and when Matt gets into the city, she basically decides that she wants him as like a temporary concubine, essentially, and he doesn't really have any say in it. Like she wants him, so she gets him, and there's a lot of like, I feel any modern reading of it reads as rape, or at the very least, like very dubious consent, because there's a power imbalance. Like he can't really, he says no. Like
it's coercion at some level.
It is coercion. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely coercion. Like he says no, he doesn't want it. Sure, he enjoys the sex, but he's very clear about not wanting to sleep with her.
That's not even a modern reading. That's just the definition. I mean,
yeah, but it's not treated as rape in the text, and so I have this very complicated like it's sort of treated as like, oh haha, Matt is so attractive to her that she can't help it. I mean that's not maybe really what it, but there's no,
it's not treated like a dramatic thing. It just happened and everyone sort of moves on.
Like it's not, yeah, and it's a prolonged thing. Like he has this relationship with her over the course of the book, and when I say relationship, I just basically mean a physical relationship. Like there's not really any emotional intimacy, but throughout the entire course of this relationship, he's trying to get out of, like he doesn't want it. He hides from her. She steals his clothes. Like,
Ugh.
but it's not treated as something serious in the book. So, and when he learns that she's dead, he's sad about it because he's come to like her on a more personal level.
That is, I know what you mean though. There is that instinct to sympathize with the main character, and you know, they are the eyes that you're experiencing the world through, regardless of perspective of the book. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And so because he is sad and mourning her, it definitely puts a different.
Yeah, and even though he like objects to the physical relationship that they have, he also doesn't view it as rape. I mean, it's never treated as rape in the text, which also like complicates my feelings about it because I think it's rape, but he doesn't act like he thinks it's rape, and he's sad about her. And like you said, that is how we are seeing that relationship, is through
Mhm.
his eyes.
Well, other than that, maybe mildly disturbing situation, how is book 10 treating you so far?
I mean, book 10 is really interesting thus far. I'm enjoying it. I feel like there has not been a lot of movement in terms of anything to advance the plot, but I am excited to see where it goes from here. So I'm definitely enjoying book 10, despite my sort of uncertain feelings about Tylen's death.
Well, there is a book that we both read to talk about this evening.
Yes, so we both read Who Fears Death by Nnedi Okorafor, published in 2010. I believe that you, Lily, had read it previously.
I did. I read it for the first time over the summer, and then I reread it yesterday. Confession. I procrastinated. I did reread it for this, so it's fresh. And I think the way we're going to structure this conversation is talk a little bit about the premise of the book and some of the really incredible strengths and reasons to read it, and then sort of separate that from our more in-depth discussion so that anyone who hears that and is interested won't get spoilers if they want to read it themselves. Does that sound like a solid plan?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Right at the top, we should say, as far as content warnings go, this book is very intense and deals with some pretty extremely graphic sexual assault and extremely violent. And it's, well,
Yeah,
if that's not something you need in your life to hear about in your life right now, I understand. Skip
yes.
forward to whatever time we're done talking about this. I'll put something here.
To skip our discussion of Who Fears Death, go to timestamp 4153.
But all that being said, this book is it's such a satisfying read. Like the end hits you so emotionally that even though it's such an intense ride, by the end I don't want to say makes it worth it because the whole thing is good, but it's not one of those books where everything is awful and terrible and then you finish reading it and you just feel like shit.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like it doesn't do that.
Yeah.
There are low points, but
I didn't know what I was getting into when I started the book. So I was very surprised at some of the very graphic rape and then the vaginal mutilation that occurs. This book had been sitting on my I bought this book probably 2014, and it has been sitting on my TBR list since then. And I've always meant to read it and just never got around to it. But yeah, it's very emotionally satisfying. It sort of puts you through the ringer, and then you come back out on the other side fulfilled.
But not in any way you could possibly see coming. So other than the absolutely intense wild ride that is the plot, one of the other very cool things about this book that we can talk about without spoiling anything is the very neat setting. It takes place in I've started seeing this in more places, but that post-technology, post-apocalyptic setting where they have computers and electricity, but they don't really seem to have the like factories to make it. They're all relics, and then that coexisting with magic and spirituality in a very cool way.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't necessarily say that they don't, in this book, that they don't have the capabilities to create technology. Clearly, they have some sort of technologies that we don't have, but it's not a focus of the book. And if those technologies do still exist, it's not something that exists in the immediate vicinity of Onyesonwu.
Like you said, that's not really the focus of the book. That's just a quirk of the setting that they exist in.
Yeah.
And it doesn't really go into it very deeply, but you still get a very vivid sense of where these people live.
Yeah, I think Okorafor does a really good job at making you feel the setting. Like, you know these people and you know where they live, and that's a skill that not everyone has, especially in 400 pages.
Yeah.
Only 400 pages.
I just checked the back of the book to see how much. I feel like anything on the back of the book is fair game for not spoilers.
Yes. Yes.
So as we sort of alluded to earlier, the main character, Onyesonwu, is the child of rape. It's a result of a generational long conflict between two ethnic groups in this region. All of that is to say, if you do have, how do you phrase, like, the emotional energy to deal with the highs and lows of this book, that sounds too dramatic.
Well, if you are in a place mentally where you can read about some really graphic things, then this book is really worth it. But if that's not for you right now, then you do what you need to do.
I mean, I cried both times I read this book.
Actually, I didn't cry that much in this book, and I'm normally a big crier when I read, which is not to say that I didn't find this book emotional or emotionally taxing. Like, it definitely hits you, and it hit me, but there weren't tears. For me, it wasn't a tear book.
It's just devastating. It's devastating in a good way. I feel like that's fair to say.
I think so. Like, it's harsh. It's not an easy read, but it's worth it.
Yeah.
To avoid spoilers for Who Fears Death, go to timestamp 4153.
Onyesonwu is one of those characters who's a fantastic character, and I love her, and I cannot stand the choice of... Actually, that's not fair. I do have to constantly remind myself how young she is in this book.
Yeah, I mean, she's 20 at the end of it.
She's 20 at the end of it. Through a lot of it, she's like 9.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, like, she's young in it. But you kind of forget that because she goes through such harsh things.
And it is told from her, it is for her adult self telling her life story.
Yeah.
So it is all in retrospect, which kind of lends it a more, like, even though it's a 9-year-old going through this, it's from the perspective of an adult. And so I definitely had to say it's okay that she's being dumb. She's 9 years old. 9-year-olds are allowed to be brats. I'm realizing maybe we should have started with an overview of the book, just to give you some context.
I think that it can be boiled down to Onyesonwu's birth father, blood father, rapes her mother, and then it turns out that he is this powerful sorcerer who wants to get rid of all of the Okeke, and Onyesonwu thinks that that is a bad idea, and he is a horrible person, which he is a horrible person. And so she goes on this journey to learn more about her sorceress powers, which she has inherited, and stop him.
Yeah, that
doesn't really do the story justice, but those are I think the main points.
One of the reasons why it's so difficult is part of the magic in this novel is the flow of information. And I think that was probably one of the main conflicts in this book, is the control of information. This is something that the main character runs into, I would say the first half of the book is the main character struggling to learn things because either people are keeping them from her or no one has told her enough that she even knows she should be asking questions. However, there was a prophecy that someone was going to change this dynamic between them. And a Nuru sorcerer decides that it's going to be him, Daib. Gosh, we haven't apologized about our pronunciations yet. I'm going to do that now. I think his name is pronounced Daib. That's how we're going to do it. He's a Nuru sorcerer warlord, basically, who does commits atrocities, just does really terrible, horrible things.
Yeah, he is a horrible person.
Murder, mutilation, genocide. The list is not short or fun. At one point, he leads a gang of Nuru men to rape a group of OKK women who were in the desert praying, as you do when you're an evil warlord. And he did this to create an Ewu child, which is a mixed race person of these two ethnic groups. But the woman that Daib assaults is also a sorceress. She's not a trained sorceress.
Untrained.
Yeah, so that's true. In
Yeah.
the book, there is a difference between just someone who has magic and someone who has gone through all of the initiation rites of sorcery.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a difference between having the latent ability and actually training that ability and being able to use it.
Well, because all of the sorcerers refuse to train women, there are no women sorcerers.
That's not exactly true. I mean, because
by the time the book happens, it's not true.
Yeah, but we have a very limited view. I mean, I feel like I wouldn't want to say that there are no women sorcerers at all, just that we don't see any. But we have a very limited view of sorcerers and sorcery until much later on in the book.
Every single sorcerer we meet is extremely sexist.
Yeah.
So
that's true.
We don't meet a single one that is not in the entire book. Unless Onye Sonwu is a sorcerer by then, but that's not the point.
But also there is the other sorceress that we meet has been in training for a long time.
She's 30.
Yeah,
she passed initiation when she was 9. So a long time, but not generations.
No, not generations.
This is the first generation of sorcerers that have trained women.
But I just think that we can't actually specifically say that because we don't know that. I think it's likely, but I don't like saying.
I think if Okorafor wanted us to know that it was a possibility in this world, she's a better writer than to not even hint at it at all.
But I mean, there's no, how do I want to phrase this?
You're right. You can't prove a negative. Sure. That's real world talk, not reading talk.
Yeah, but also it just it doesn't come up. It's not.
It comes up a ton.
Well, I was going to say whether or not there are women sorcerers outside of where this conflict takes place or this book takes place doesn't really.
Well, sure, there could be a whole moon full of women sorcerer aliens, but that's not really relevant. In this culture, there aren't any.
We haven't seen any.
I think if there were any in this world, then the author would have shown that to us. The entire first half of this book is the main character going through hell and high water to try to convince some old fuck to teach her magic.
Yeah, I mean, he's an old fuck, a sexist old fuck. There's no doubt about that. And a lot of these people are very sexist.
All right, then what did you think of the book?
I liked it. I mean, it was a hard read. Like I said, I didn't know anything about it going forward, except that I had this book on my to-read list for years and years and years. And I'm generally not, I want happy endings, and I wouldn't necessarily call this a happy ending. It is a hopeful ending, maybe, but not really happy. I also don't like a lot of character death, and this ends with a lot of character death and some maybe character death. If I had known some of the plot points, I probably wouldn't have read it because like I said, I like happy things. But it was a really good book. I'm glad that I did read it, and it dealt with really powerful subject matter.
It did. And I end up being of two minds of a lot of these characters, because on one end they fit into the story and they work together, and you watch them struggle and sometimes prevail and sometimes make very bad decisions, and their flaws are none of them are sugar coated. Even Onye, like from the very beginning, she admits, like, my temper is my greatest weakness. So then every time her temper gets into trouble, it's just like, well, yeah, okay.
There's definitely no sugarcoating these characters. Like, they are, period.
When it comes to as characters, they're all very good and wonderful, but like I could not stand a single one of them. That's not true. I liked Luyu, Onye's friend, and I liked Onye's parents.
She's great, yeah.
Luyu is the only one. I don't even like Onye, really. Like, I wouldn't be her friend.
Onye I like, but a lot of the characters I do find kind of unlikable.
I wouldn't be able to be friends with her, because how could you look someone in the eye who is in a relationship with a guy like Muita and say, oh yeah, you make good choices?
I didn't think he was that bad.
Oh, he was awful.
I mean, I think that he has some sexist feelings that he's working through.
I don't get the impression that he's working through them. I get the impression that he's hiding them because he knows they make Onye mad. Maybe that's just a different read.
That's, yeah, like I thought that he was trying, maybe not necessarily successfully, but he was trying to be better. We also, like, again, they're both young and we don't see them as mature adults, because the novel takes place, I mean, they're 20 at the oldest. Well, I think Muita is a little older maybe, but
he's like 22.
Yeah, I mean, that's still a baby.
That's true. I mean, he had also been training, or not training to be a sorcerer, because you have to pass initiation. He was learning magic and did not pass initiation to be a sorcerer. And his jealousy that Onye did, I actually have no problem with. That's fair.
I think that's very understandable.
Yeah, that's fine. And that I think he does struggle with and try to overcome.
Yeah.
But he is so hypocritical with Onye. I think one of like the most clear example of that is when they are in the what is it? What's the village called? When they are in when they're with Solu. When they're in Solu, which is the nomadic traveling village inside the eye of a dust storm.
Which is so cool.
So cool. That was probably my favorite part of the whole book, was the Va people and that whole like community.
Yeah, I think I would have to agree with you there.
But when they're there and a spirit shows up to do goodness knows what, because they're not necessarily benevolent, and Onye doesn't want to go, she's hesitating about going out and facing it, and Muita's like, stop being such a woman, like, you're a coward, what's wrong with you? And then the second they both get out there, he's like, oh no, wait, no, don't go, what are you doing? Like, he's terrified. And it's like, yeah, you shithead. He goads her and calls her a coward anytime she hesitates, but anytime she doesn't hesitate, he calls her an emotional, irrational woman. There is no winning with him. Everything she does is wrong. At no point does he go like, yes, you made the right choice, good for you. All he does is bandage her up and complain about it the whole time.
I don't have any, like, that was not the impression that I got from the book at all.
Ugh.
Like, I don't have one specific like scene that I can point to refute you. but I definitely, like, I don't necessarily particularly care all that much for him, but I think that he cares for her.
Sure, but I don't think he respects her.
I disagree there. I think that he does respect her, but he's battling his feelings about the internalized sexism that he has, that's been reinforced.
That's not internalized. That's just sexism.
Well, okay, that's just sexism. Yeah, you're right. but so he's battling the sexism that is, reinforced by the culture and by all of his mentors. and he's not always successful at it.
I don't remember a single instance where he is not sexist towards her.
I mean, but on the other hand, I couldn't tell you that, like, I wouldn't say that he's always sexist towards her. So,
But you don't
I
have
think
proof that he wasn't. So I got
that's true.
I got more.
I didn't I didn't make copious notes as I was reading. I should have, but I didn't.
But all of that are like complaints on a like personhood level.
Yeah, I mean that's
As a character, he's very good. That's a completely different conversation.
yeah, that's separate.
Because he is a very good foil for Onye, because he's also Ewu, but he was born from parents who loved each other, and so you have that like huge comparison. And then you also get just the way the characters balance each other out and move through the story is very well done.
Yeah, I think that they're a very well balanced pair.
Have you ever had to look a friend in the eye and say, I would never date your boyfriend, but that's okay because I'm not the one doing it? Like, that's kind of how I feel. Like, I would shoot myself before I dated someone like him. So I do not understand what anyone could possibly see in him as a partner. But I'm not the one doing it, so I guess that's fine. Like, honey, if you want to sign yourself up for a lifetime of belittlement, you do you.
Again, I don't think that he belittles her as much as you say that he does.
He really does.
Really, that is not what I got out of it. But also, I still probably would not want to date him either.
Yeah, right? It reminds me a little bit of the relationship between DT, one of Onye's friends, and her fiance Fanasi. Their relationship starts when they're very, very young, and Fanasi gets super butthurt because all of the young women in the village are cursed to feel pain instead of pleasure sexually, right? That was one of the big things that happens when they're 11.
Until they get married. The curse gets resolved when they get married.
And so Fanasi gets mad at her and like won't speak to her for years because they were fooling around and she was in pain, and he took that as an insult. And later on, as they leave the village with Onye, and DT sort of discovers the world outside the village, her world is expanded. She meets other people. She's no longer cursed because Onye cures that for her friends. And she realizes suddenly that Fanasi is not her only choice. That's something Lu Yu said at the beginning. Lu Yu's my favorite character.
I like Lu Yu a lot, yeah.
She's fantastic.
When the girls first find out the full consequences of the curse, Lu Yu says, "They make us feel only pain, so when our husbands first touch us, we will think they're gods." Or something like that. That's not quite right.
The only boy that's ever nice to Onye is Muita. Of course she's going to fall in love with him. Literally the only person in the whole world who's nice to you. That's not a relationship of love. That is like Stockholm syndrome. That's not fair. It's not Stockholm syndrome. He's not keeping her there. But
yeah, I mean,
it's not like she chose him out of multiple options.
Yeah, I mean, if there were more people, then maybe her choice would have been different. But I do think that she loves, like, they have genuine feelings for each other, not just because they're the only Ewu around and no one else wants them. I don't think it's entirely unhealthy, but I won't argue that it's not entirely healthy either.
I had one other thing I wanted to talk about. It's very short though. Solu, the sort of granddaddy sorcerer, if you will. At some point he talks about Daib's plans to wipe out the OKK people, and he refers to it as a revolution, and that is just bonkers to me. The Nuru are already like in control. That's not a revolution, that's just genocide. Like, what are you talking about? like what? No. That's not here nor there. That's not a conversation. That's just like, Solu, honey. What are you doing?
Yeah, maybe not the best word choice right there.
Revolution. Like, what? I think my favorite part of the whole book was, oh man, is his name Solu and the village named Solu?
No, they're not the same.
I think I wrote it down. I might have written it down wrong.
I really don't think they're the same.
Well, one has more S's in it, which is why I didn't
True.
realize it until just now. But yeah, it's the same, right? Oops. Not oops. I'm probably pronouncing one of them wrong, is really what that means. The nomadic tribe called Solu is definitely my favorite part of the book.
Yeah, I think that's my favorite part too. Partially because I feel like that's the happiest part.
I was gonna say, it's just nice.
Yeah.
They're also so cool. Oh my god.
Yeah. I would love to explore just their tribe more. I think that would be a really interesting world building book to see more of them.
A huge polyamorous tribe that lives in the center of a miles-long dust storm is the coolest thing. I don't want to.
Very cool.
I just want to live there. Like,
yes.
I mean, sure, a book is as close as I'll get, but that's the coolest thing ever. And I just love the image of all the little kids just running around and eating a meal with whoever is the closest.
Yeah, it's very congenial.
And then also, like you said, it's the happiest. This is the first.
Yeah.
This is the first society that hasn't been cruel to Onye. There's been people, of course, but as far as like an actual group, I think they're the only ones. Okay, you're telling me you didn't cry when Onye, at the very end of the book, it's the climax. Onye is about to rewrite not only the future, but all of history and completely change the world. And they're on this little island and they're surrounded by people coming to attack them. They're like, on boats, they're coming for them. We just had this crazy chase. And Luyu says, you go. Like, I'll hold them off. That didn't make you cry?
That's the closest I came. There might have been one or two tears, but it wasn't like an outpouring of tears.
Oh, I mean, I wasn't sobbing, but there was.
No, but I sob at books, and I didn't sob at this one. I feel like this book, it was like a quiet sort of introspective book.
Pain.
Like
for every part of this book, I think maybe except for how much I loved Luyu. And just that being her way of going out was just like, oh, it hit me.
I was very,
She also has well, I'm not going to say it. She doesn't have the best character arc because, of course, Onye, grows and learns. But I think Luyu has the most dramatic one because she goes from this pampered, precocious child and she takes that and she owns it and becomes just this force of nature. But then, as Onye brings up over and over again in her narration, with zero magical powers, Luyu doesn't give a fuck.
That is her magical power.
Yeah, oh, I love it. She just goes face to face with like these incredible, horrifying things. I mean, the horrifying people things, but then also she stares magical spirits down and is just like, yeah, girl, I'm here for you. Like, oh, she's the best.
I do like Luyu, yeah.
I don't think she should have slept with Fanasi, but I get it.
No woman is perfect.
Yeah. She also was she does hide it at first. But I appreciate, like, she was the one who was most sincere during that whole thing. I think. She was like, yeah, I'm not in love with him, but this is the first time I've been able to sleep with someone and not been in unimaginable pain, so yeah, I'm gonna take that opportunity. Like, is that kind? No, but it's honest.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the whole group is just evidence of the fact that not all friends travel well together.
Well, that's true. They're also, as we said, like 20. So,
Yeah.
gosh, who doesn't do unintentionally mean things when they're 20?
This is very true.
The last thing I have, which is not actually a complaint, is more of a comment on my weird prejudices against first person POV. I almost didn't read this book. I bought it, I picked it up, I read like 2 pages and went, oh no.
But
Purely
okay,
because
so I have a question though.
Mhm.
When you bought it, did you not like open it up to read the first like bit and
I bought it
notice that it was
online.
first person?
I don't go to stores.
Oh.
I bought it this
Yeah, I'm
summer.
thinking when I that's true. I'm thinking, oh, I bought my book, 5 years ago. You must have too. No, that's not the case.
And this isn't Archive of Our Own, where they tag if it's in first person perspective or not. All I read was the back, and that doesn't tell you.
That's
Which is
true.
good, because I probably would have not bought it, and that would be terrible, because it's very good. It's just funny because I really like have a hard time with first person, but I got over it because this book is really well done, and I'm not going to say I didn't even notice it, because Onye's voice is very important to the story, but even my weird hangups were no match in the face of this excellent book. So this segment was actually the foundational concept for this entire podcast, and we have clearly gotten away from ourselves. This is our Pet Peeve Corner, where we complain about stuff that we find in stuff we read. That's it. That's the whole thing.
That's the shtick.
Sarah, do you have anything to complain about today?
I do. So I was reading a story on AO3, a fan fiction, and I didn't notice this in the first chapter, but I got to the second chapter and I noticed that there were no capital letters used at all in this fic. And I tried and I could not read it. So back button hit. I moved on with my life.
Okay, but like even autocorrect will capitalize stuff. You have to try to not capitalize. Like, I don't even
Yeah, I
understand how
mean,
that happens.
yeah, like I think it was definitely intentional, but so it was a stylistic choice that they made, but it was not a stylistic choice that I liked. And I didn't mind it so much in the first chapter because I think they didn't use, like, I could get, if it was just the beginnings of sentences that weren't capitalized, I could maybe get past that, but they weren't capitalizing like names either. And the second chapter used a lot of names, and it was too much. I need some capitals in my life.
Homophones. We've all learned that sometimes words sound the same but are not the same word. And if it happens once, it's fine. It's a mistake. Get over it. Everyone makes mistakes. But if they use the same word a couple of times, I cannot do it. That's not true. I still read it. I'm just mad the whole time. The most jarring one that I run into when you're reading romance is he grabbed her waist.
Yeah.
He grabbed her waist. It's an embrace. Except they spell it waste as in trash, or bodily waste, which is an even worse mental image. And it just completely takes me out of the story. Like, I cannot. Do we want to introduce? I am taking full credit for the name of this segment. and I'm sure you're happy to give it to me because it's lame.
Oh yeah.
So, but it's mine, goddammit.
The credit is all yours.
It is our first step. What is it? The journey of 100 books starts with a single page. That's the quote, right? I'm sure I got it right. We are embarking on our journey to the center of the Discworld. And it's fun because it doesn't even make sense because there's not a center because it's a Discworld. Like it's nonsense on every level.
I mean, even discs have centers. There is technically a center.
That's true, but the center of the earth is the core of the earth. That's the origin, the reference.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a core.
I just thought it would be fun. We've both read these books. It's been a while. I haven't actually read all of them, so there are going to be some of these. No.
Really? What did you stop with?
I mean, I've kind of read a random scattering of them.
Oh.
It's just there are holes, is all I'm going to say. There are holes in my repertoire, if you will. But this is going to be a great time to read them all finally. And then also reread the ones that I've read 100 times before. But we're embarking on a journey to the center of the Discworld, which, to use not nonsense words for everyone else, Discworld is a series of books by Terry Pratchett, who is a British, I don't even want to, like, sci-fi author? That's not quite right. Comedy writer?
That's not, I mean, I think that sci-fi authors is the closest you can get.
It's not wrong.
I mean, his books kind of defy genre in many ways.
Well, and they are a parody also. You know, he's parodying so many tropes of science fiction and fantasy.
Yeah.
Throughout the series, which I'm going to have so much fun being obnoxious about. Buckle up. But the very first book is The Color of Magic, and it came out in, I just looked at this page and I already forgot, 1983. The one. Correct.
That is the one.
And before we get to talking about this book in particular, you had a Twitter conversation the other day regarding which Discworld book you should start with. And I think we should talk a little bit about that. There's not going to be much non-spoiler conversation for this book. Read Discworld. If you haven't, listen to this anyway and then read it. They're all good. I don't feel like the story is as... What am I trying to say? The journey is the fun part of Terry Pratchett. His language is phenomenal and hilarious. Like, knowing how it ends is not going to ruin it for you.
I feel like a lot of his books, because they play on well-known tropes, like you can kind of point out what the plot progression is, so it doesn't matter if you know, like, how the story is going to end, because he makes you interested in how it gets there.
Exactly. And we're about to encourage you to not even start in order, which means you're going to know how other stuff happened. Like, because he has these, like, sort of chunks of stories that take place on this earth, on the
Discworld
turtle, on the Discworld. You end up spoiling yourself, or at least I did, because I would read one character's set and they would mention another character who is apparently has this one job, but then when I went and started their series, they weren't there yet. So I knew which job they would get to eventually, and that was fine. Like that, it wasn't a problem.
The rest of this episode contains spoilers for The Color of Magic.
Maybe you can give me just like a one sentence. If X is your thing, maybe we can come up with one together. If X is your thing, or if you like X, read The Color of Magic.
I don't have a short promo that I can use for that, because I think that you will enjoy The Color of Magic more if you are familiar with his other work. Like, I don't think that The Color of Magic is where you should start. I think that once you have read some of Discworld, you should come back to The Color of Magic.
It is very much an exploration of the setting. very fundamentally.
He's definitely finding his feet with the color of magic. Like, he doesn't quite know how the world is going to shape up. And for example, Ankh-Morpork, pretty much the main city that a lot of the characters are from or are in the later series, is much more, I don't want to say comedically grimy, but like over the top grimy. And there are bits of the city that are clean in this book, which is a change. But I think that if you enjoy like pastiche of other genres, this is a good book for you, because it's a very clear pastiche of a lot of different genres.
The sort of driving force of this book is that a tourist comes to Ankh-Morpork, right? And so we get to see this city through the eyes of a tourist, and
except that much of this story takes place not in Ankh-Morpork.
Right, but that's how we're starting.
That is how we start.
And then he's a tourist of everywhere, and Two Flower is this tourist. His name is Two Flower, and isn't he really all of us? Aren't we all Two Flower? Who hasn't thought, man, I'd like to meet a dragon? Like, that is who we are as readers of fantasy and sci-fi, experiencing these worlds, thinking, oh, it would be so fun to drink a pint of mead down at the grimy inn. Like, that is who we are. And then we have this person going through and doing that, and all of the people of this world just thinking he's completely bonkers. And it's so much fun. And then of course, the recurring joke that they don't know what a tourist is, and that it's not something that comes up in a lot of his books, but with Two Flower you see a lot. There are concepts, like modern, real world concepts, that he brings up because he is us, not actually us. He's from Discworld, just a different continent. He's an insurance agent. And no one knows what insurance is. And he tries to explain it as gambling that your tavern won't burn down. And so the tavern owner is like, yeah, I'll make that bet. And then burns his tavern down. Like, it's just so... The true masterful parody is being able to take the familiar and make it unfamiliar. And Terry Pratchett does that in such a delightful way in this book.
Yes, I agree with you. But I think that this book is a lot more unrefined than his later work.
Oh, I agree completely.
Yeah, like I think that he gets a lot better at weaving the parody in such a way that you get it, but it doesn't feel unnatural. And this book kind of, like, you feel the parody bludgeoning you over the head a little bit.
Two Flower is literally a tourist walking into a tavern going, I want to see a bar fight. Like, it's much more absurd, and everything Terry Pratchett does is absurd, but it is ridiculous in a way that I feel like in his later books, the story takes itself more seriously, and we as the readers know the parody. Whereas in this, everyone is aware of how ridiculous the situation is.
Yeah. Yeah, I also feel that in later books, he's just parodying like one thing, generally. Like, and in this, so unlike a lot of his later Discworld books, this is actually divided into chapters. And to me, it feels more like a series of short stories that are brought together in one publication than like a continuous cohesive plot.
Yeah.
Because it feels like he's reintroducing the characters and the concepts in each sort of like short arc.
Yes.
And each arc is also like parodying a different genre. Like the first chapter or the first arc that takes place in Ankh-Morpork or around Ankh-Morpork is like parodying, Dungeons and Dragons and that sort of thing. Like, they even have a line about failing a roll for initiative.
Yeah.
Or he has a line about failing a roll for initiative. And then you have the next section, which is like a parody of like Lovecraft. And then you have the parody of Anne McCaffrey and the Dragon Riders of Pern. And then you have kind of the Jules Verne parody. So it feels a lot more segmented than some of his other work.
I feel like it almost is a proof of concept, because the rest of Discworld is this exact same idea. You know, he does Phantom of the Opera. He does more that I can't think of at the moment.
Macbeth.
Oh yes, he does Macbeth.
Hollywood.
Oh my God. There we go. There's so many. They're all so good.
They are.
I have read those. See, I've read most of them. There's just a couple weird gaps. But he does each one as its own book. Whereas in this, he's sort of like, he's playing with the concept.
Yeah.
Like, does this have legs? He's throwing it all at the wall and seeing what sticks. And the answer is all of it. So now he can like actually take his time.
Yeah, but that's part of why I feel like this is not the book that you should, even though it's like going by publication date, this is the first book that was published. That's part of why I feel like it's not the book that you should start with, because he is just throwing things at the wall. And so if you come to the more polished stuff, then you can go back and say, oh, I see where he kind of got, like how he started, and I can appreciate this sort of more diamond in the rough than I would if I maybe started. I say that, but that's actually, I started with The Color of Magic. I read in publication order, but I don't think that's how one should start.
I marked Death's intro just because I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, in later series, I feel like he's a lot more, I don't want to say methodical, but he doesn't take life randomly in later series. It's all governed by like, is it your time to die, essentially?
Yeah.
And in this book, he just kind of like kills people because he gets annoyed, which is very different.
Yeah, the rules haven't been established yet. I also completely forgot about the board game thing, the sort of conceit that the gods are playing a board game and the characters in this book are being affected by the moves they make and the dice they roll, which is very silly and fun, but also it tries to do too much, I think.
Yeah.
There's like,
yeah,
there are so many little snippets of gold, but none of them really get the time to shine.
It's hard to talk about The Color of Magic in a whole lot more detail because it's not really a very meaty book, as we've said.
True. I love Rincewind. He's such an ass.
Yeah.
How many times does he ditch Two Flower because it's not worth it? Two Flower is running into danger, and Rincewind knows better, and he's just like, no, I'm out.
I mean, part of what makes Rincewind such an interesting character is that like he tries to avoid these horrible situations, and he just like, through no fault of his own, he gets put in them, but he knows they're horrible, and the whole time he's like, how can I like get out of this?
It's not that character where you think you're only here because you did the stupid thing that you obviously shouldn't do. And he is cruel for ditching Two Flower, who kind of needs him as his tour guide, you know? But you also understand, like, yeah, he recognizes that he's in way over his head. And I respect his his decision making in that regard.
He did the math.
That doesn't make him a good person, though.
No, and he's very objectively, like, all he cares about is saving his own skin, which you would think on the surface that wouldn't make for a good character to read about, but it actually really works with Rincewind because he's not malicious about it, and he's so sort of bumbling and...
Yeah, he doesn't go out of his way to screw anyone over.
Right, and he's also just kind of bumbling and incompetent. I mean, not necessarily intentionally so, but it just sort of happens.
Well, that's who he is, right?
Yeah.
He was he got kicked out of wizard school.
Yes.
He flunked out of wizard college.
He did flunk out of wizard college.
So that's exactly who he is. He's just kind of incompetent. And but he knows, like, he doesn't, but he knows it. That's mean, but it's true. He's not in these situations because he thinks he's all powerful.
Yeah.
He's in these situations because he couldn't avoid them.
To be fair, part of the reason why he flunked out of wizard school And I feel like this is maybe a little minimized in the later books. Like it doesn't, but it's where in the later books he flunked out of wizard school because of this, but also like just because he was generally bad at magic to begin with. But in this, the main reason why he flunked out of wizard school is because he has this one spell. He knows this one spell, but it's too powerful and it won't let him like memorize any other spell. So he couldn't do magic after that.
So the way he memorized it is he was drunkenly dared by his, I'm going to call them frat buddies. I'm sure Pratchett doesn't call them that, but it's the spirit of the
They're
thing.
probably, yeah.
To crack open the like forbidden grimoire that contains the 8 spells that created the universe, the octavo. And so Rincewind opens it and the spell just jumps into his head. Poor Rincewind.
Poor Rincewind, yep. You can find us on social media on Twitter and Instagram at @FictionFansPod. And if you have enjoyed this episode, please leave a review and rate us on Apple Podcasts.
On our next episode, we'll be discussing The Prey of Gods by Nikki Drayden. Hope to see you there. Bye.
Bye. I don't know why I was waving at you. You're
all right.
Not hanging up yet.
I don't like hope to see you there.
We're still figuring things out.
Yeah. It's fine for now. It's fine for now. I'm leaving it.
Yeah.
I am going to stop recording though.
Okay.